Welcome to AudioCert, where the official study guides are brought to life. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really crucial journey. We're looking into a world that's becoming, well, more and more intertwined with just about everything we do. We're tackling EC Council Certified Ethical Hacker V13 Module 18, IoT and OT hacking. So two massive interconnected realms of the Internet of Things, IoT and operational technology, OT. And these aren't just, abstract ideas. They are really the invisible forces shaping our smart homes, our cities, even the critical infrastructure that, powers modern life.
That's absolutely right. And this deep dive, it's probably more vital than ever. We're seeing this huge convergence happening right now, all this increased connectivity, with our devices, our industrial systems. It brings amazing opportunities, sure, but it also opens up a whole new, very complex landscape of cybersecurity threats. And with OT, we're not just talking digital risks. These are direct safety concerns, real-world physical consequences.
Right. Big difference there.
Huge. So our mission today really is to kind of cut through that complexity. We want to pull out the most important insights so you can genuinely understand what's going on behind the scenes, in this super connected reality we live in.
So think of this as your shortcut, your guide to understanding both the amazing benefits and, let's be honest, the hidden dangers. We're talking everything from like the fitness tracker on your wrist, the smart speaker in your house, all the way to those huge, intricate systems running power plants or water treatment facilities. We're going to connect the dots for you. You'll see how these techs work, why they're vulnerable, and what it actually takes to protect them. So let's start with the everyday stuff, the connections that touch all of us. Okay, let's unpack this first one. We hear Internet of Things thrown around all the time, but what exactly is it? And how did it get so everywhere? Feels like everything is smart these days.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. So at its core, the Internet of Things, or IoT, sometimes you'll hear Internet of Everything. IoE, it basically describes this network of devices. But the key thing is, these devices have their own unique Internet protocol address, an IP address. And what makes them, smart is their ability to sense things, collect data, and then send that data somewhere. They do this using embedded sensors, communication hardware, little processors. Think of them almost like tiny digital agents interacting with the world and reporting back.
So a thing isn't just like a physical object anymore. It's a device inside an object, giving it a kind of digital voice on a network.
Exactly right. A thing is typically a device implanted onto, almost anything, natural objects, human-made stuff, even embedded in bigger machines. Its fundamental job is just to communicate over some kind of network. And the evolution of IoT, it's been pretty fascinating, really. It's a story of convergence, like you said. Wireless tech got better, more widespread. We developed these tiny microelectromechanical systems, MEMS. Then you have the rise of microservices, modular software, and tying it all together, of course, is the internet itself. All these different threads kind of wove together to create this IoT ecosystem we have now.
Wow, that's quite a combination of technologies. So what are the key features? What really makes these things so transformative?
Yeah, we can break it down into a few core characteristics. First, obviously, connectivity. They have to be able to link up. Second, they need sensors to gather data from the physical world around them. And increasingly, we're seeing artificial intelligence, AI, built in. This helps them process the data they collect, maybe even make decisions on their own. The devices themselves, they tend to be small, often embedded, so they're not really obvious. And crucially, they're designed for active engagement. They're not just passive collectors. They're constantly interacting, gathering, sometimes responding.
Okay, so it's definitely way more than just smart thermostats, though those are part of it. Can you give us a few examples, maybe some real-world applications that show just how diverse IoT really is?
Oh, absolutely. Take healthcare. IoT is a game changer there. You've got wearable devices, smartwatches, monitoring heart rates, sure, but also implanted devices like pacemakers, sending real-time data directly to doctors. That's revolutionizing remote monitoring, telemedicine. Then in our homes and commercial buildings, you see smart thermostats, learning schedules, lighting systems adjusting automatically, complex security systems. And then there's the whole industrial Internet of Things, the IIoT. That's applying these same ideas to, heavy industry manufacturing. It boosts efficiency, enables intelligent factories, creates entirely new business models. It's a massive driver of change across the board.
Right. So from your own fitness tracker maybe, or your smart speaker, you're interacting with this stuff constantly, every single day. But have you ever really stopped to think about what makes them smart or, how they actually work under the hood? It's way more complicated than just having a Wi-Fi chip.
It really is. It's a surprisingly complex ecosystem working behind the scenes.
Okay, so we've got billions of these devices out there, sensing, collecting, sending data. But how does all this data actually, move? How does it get from the device to where it needs to go? It can't just, like, teleport.
No, definitely not teleportation. You're right, there's a structured process. It usually involves four main systems working together. You've got the IoT devices themselves, the things doing the sensing. Then gateway systems. After that, data storage systems, which are very often cloud-based these days. And finally, the remote control part, usually through mobile apps. Let's walk through an example. Say, a smart security system. Your camera, that's the IoT device, detects some unusual motion. It doesn't just beam an alert straight to your phone. Instead, it sends that data packet to an IoT gateway. Now, this gateway is super important. It acts like a bridge, connecting that camera to the internet and ultimately to the cloud infrastructure. Often, it also has to translate protocols like a language interpreter so different devices can understand each other.
Ah, okay. So the gateway is like the traffic cop and translator combined.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. From the gateway, the data travels hopefully securely up to a cloud server or data storage system. This is where the raw data gets stored, often processed, analyzed. For our security camera example, the cloud service might analyze the motion, maybe use AI to determine if it's a person or just, a cat. Then, finally, this processed, useful information gets transmitted to you, the end user, probably via a remote control mobile app on your smartphone or tablet. And that app lets you see what's happening, maybe lock your doors, sound an alarm, take some action.
That makes sense. It's a clear pathway. So there's a whole architecture supporting this, right? Like layers building on each other from the sensor up to the app on my phone.
Exactly. You can think of it generally in four main layers. Down at the bottom, you've got the edge technology layer. This is all the hardware, the sensors, RFID tags, readers, the bits actually collecting the raw data. Above that is the access gateway layer. We just talked about that, handling protocol translation, connecting the edge devices to the wider network. Then comes the cloud layer. This is where the heavy lifting happens, storing massive amounts of data, processing it, analyzing it. And right at the top, you have the application layer. This is what delivers the services and the interface to us, the users. So your mobile app, a web dashboard, that kind of thing. This layered structure is really what allows these billions of devices to somehow work together, creating this huge interconnected web.
Right. It's this structure that allows for that scale, managing all that complexity so we get those seamless interactions we kind of expect now.
And that seamless interaction, it depends on all these devices speaking a whole bunch of different languages or communication protocols. And this diversity, it's both an engineering marvel and honestly a pretty significant security headache. When we talk short-range wireless communication, think about things like Bluetooth Low Energy, BLE, or Bluetooth Smart. It's a type of wireless personal area network, WPAN. Great for low-power stuff like your fitness tracker, maybe some medical sensors, smart home gadgets connecting them to your phone or a central hub. Then there's near-field communication, NFC. That's for really short distances like centimeters. It works using magnetic field induction. It's the tech behind your contactless payments, tapping phones to share info, or some digital ID systems. And a really interesting emerging one is light fidelity, Li-Fi. This uses visible light, like from standard LED bulbs, to transmit data at potentially very high speeds. Imagine your room's lights also giving you super fast internet. Still developing, but cool potential.
Wi-Fi, huh? That's
Yeah.
pretty wild. What about longer distances?
For long-range wireless communication, the most obvious is cellular, like 4G, 5G that your phone uses. It covers huge distances, handles high-quality data, but it can be pricey and it drains batteries faster, which isn't always great for tiny IoT devices. Another one you might hear about is Nuceral. It's interesting because it uses the unlicensed spectrum in the TV white spaces, those unused broadcast frequencies. The idea is to provide good coverage over large areas at a lower cost, specifically for IoT networks. And then, moving up the stack, you have application layer protocols. These define how the actual software on the devices communicates. For instance, lightweight machine-to-machine, LWM2M. That's specifically designed for managing IoT devices, things like configuration changes, firmware updates, reporting status. There's also the physical web concept. This aims for faster interaction. Imagine walking near a smart bus stop. It could broadcast its scheduled URL using a BLE beacon, and your phone could just pick it up instantly without needing a special app. So all these different protocols get used in different communication models. You might have a device-to-cloud model, a direct path. Your smart thermostat might use something like HTTP, hopefully secured with TLS, to send its temperature readings straight to the manufacturer's cloud service. Or you could have a device-to-gateway model. Here, the IoT device talks to an intermediate gateway first, like a dedicated smart home hub. That hub then handles the connection to the cloud. This often adds security features and does that protocol translation we talked about. Common protocols here are things like Zigbee or Z-Wave.
Okay, like a local coordinator managing the chatter before it goes online.
Exactly. And finally, there's a model called back-end data sharing. This is kind of an extension where authorized third parties can access data from the cloud for their own analysis. Think about your utility company maybe accessing anonymized smart meter data to analyze energy consumption patterns across a neighborhood.
Wow. Okay, that is a dizzying array of protocols and models. It really hammers home the complexity of the whole IoT ecosystem. But if there's one big takeaway here, it seems like this diversity isn't just about choice. It's a massive challenge for security, isn't it? Like every single one of these protocols could be a potential weak link.
That's precisely the issue for ethical hackers and security pros. Each protocol, each communication method has its own unique characteristics, its own potential vulnerabilities, its own attack surface that needs to be understood and defended. There's no single silver bullet for securing all of this.
All right, so we've sketched out this huge world of IoT, everything from our watches to maybe smart city sensors. But what happens when that same kind of connectivity and all those potential vulnerabilities gets applied to the systems that, well, literally keep the lights on and the factories running? That brings us to operational technology, or OT.
Exactly. Operational technology, OT, refers specifically to the hardware and software that's used to monitor and, crucially, control physical processes, physical devices, and infrastructure. So unlike information technology, IT, which is mostly about managing data and information, OT directly interacts with the physical world. Think automated control systems networked together, designed to achieve specific industrial goals.
And what's driving the big focus on OT security lately? I keep hearing about ITO convergence. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's a huge trend. Basically, industrial facilities are digitizing rapidly. They're connecting their operational equipment, the machines on the factory floor, the control systems for pipelines to the internet. Why? For better efficiency, remote monitoring, easier data access, things like that. This ITOT convergence is the merging of the traditional IT world business networks, data servers with the OT world, the industrial networks, the physical control systems. And while it brings huge benefits in terms of efficiency and insight,
There's always a but.
there's always a but. It also introduces significant new cybersecurity threats. And maybe even more importantly, serious safety concerns. Because when OT systems are compromised, it's not just data at risk, it's physical processes. So getting cybersecurity right in this converged environment is absolutely paramount.
I can only imagine. We're not talking about losing emails here. We're talking about potentially catastrophic failures in the real world.
Precisely. And that leads us straight into the concept of critical infrastructure. These are the systems and assets, physical or even logical, where failure or destruction would have a severe impact. We're talking national security, public safety, the economy, public health, power grids, water treatment plants, transportation networks, healthcare systems.
The essentials.
The absolute essentials. A cyber attack targeting the OT systems within critical infrastructure could have devastating physical consequences. It could impact human lives, disrupt essential services. It's a whole different level of risk compared to typical IT breaches.
So just like IoT has its own protocols, these industrial OT systems also have their own specialized languages.
They do. OT systems rely heavily on industrial protocols. Many of these are proprietary, meaning they're specific to one manufacturer's equipment. Others are non-proprietary standards, more widely adopted, like Modbus or DNP3 or Profinet. Often, these protocols run over standard networking like Ethernet using TCP or UDP, but the commands and data formats are unique to the industrial world. And here's a critical security point. Many of these protocols were designed decades ago, primarily for efficiency and reliability within isolated, trusted networks.
So security wasn't really the top priority back then.
Exactly. They often lack basic security features like encryption or strong authentication that we take for granted in IT today. This makes them inherently different and often more vulnerable, posing unique challenges for defense.
Yeah, that difference is stark. Unlike IT, where maybe data loss is the worst outcome, a cyber attack on OT could have those catastrophic physical consequences, affecting lives, essential services. It really highlights the unique stakes involved here.
It's the absolute core distinction. It elevates OT security from just protecting information to protecting physical processes, safety, and potentially lives. That's why this field is so critical. Okay, so to really understand how OT controls the physical world, we need to dig into industrial control systems, or ICS. This is kind of the umbrella term for the networks and systems that monitor and control those industrial processes we've been talking about. And there are several key components, each playing a vital role. Let's try an orchestra analogy. Maybe that helps. First up, you have supervisory control and data acquisition systems, or SCADA. Think of SCADA as the orchestra conductor for a really big, spread-out industrial operation. It's a centralized system used for monitoring and controlling large, geographically distributed infrastructure, things like oil and gas pipelines, wastewater treatment plants, the electrical grid across a region. It gathers data from many remote sites, lets operators make high-level decisions, and sends commands back down the chain.
Okay, so SCADA is the big picture view, the overall control.
Exactly. Now, stepping down a level, you have distributed control systems, or DCS. If SCADA is the conductor for the whole symphony, a DCS is more like the section leader, managing a specific part of the orchestra, say, the strings or the woodwinds. A DCS typically focuses on controlling complex processes within a more localized area, often a single manufacturing plant, maybe a chemical plant or a refinery. They're designed for high reliability and continuous operation within that facility.
More focused, more localized control.
Got it. Then we get down to the real workhorses. Programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, those are like the individual musicians in our orchestra, each playing their specific part precisely. PLCs are small, rugged computers. They're programmed with specific instructions to perform tasks like controlling logic, timing sequences, managing inputs and outputs, I/O. They're everywhere in manufacturing, controlling robots on an assembly line, managing processes in a steel mill. They directly interact with the machinery.
Okay, the hands-on control is doing the specific jobs.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, a really critical component, especially for safety, is the Safety Instrumented System, or SIS. These are the safety nets, or maybe the emergency brakes for the whole operation. And SIS is an automated control system specifically designed to safeguard the manufacturing environment if something hazardous happens. If critical parameters go outside safe limits, think pressure getting too high, temperature spiking, the SIS is designed to automatically override the normal controls and take the process to a predefined safe state, like initiating an emergency shutdown.
So it's a fail-safe mechanism.
It's the critical fail-safe. It sits alongside the main control system, but has the authority to intervene when safety is compromised. You also have human-machine interfaces, HMIs. These are the screens and consoles operators use to monitor what's going on and interact with the SCADA, DCS, or PLC systems. And out in the field, you have things like remote terminal units, RTUs, and intelligent electronic devices, IEDs, which are the field devices actually connecting to the sensors and actuators on the equipment.
Right. These systems, they're really the unsung heroes behind so much of modern life, aren't they? From the clean water we drink to the power lighting this room. But that complexity and the critical nature of what they control, it makes them a particularly challenging target for cybersecurity. The impact of failure is just enormous.
Absolutely enormous. And protecting them requires a very different mindset than traditional IT security. The stakes just couldn't be higher. Now, to manage all these security challenges, especially with IT and OT converging, a really foundational framework that everyone in this space uses is the Purdue model. You'll hear this mentioned a lot. It basically helps everyone understand the connections and dependencies between all the different components in an ICS network, and it's crucial for planning security. The core idea is pretty straightforward. It divides the environment into two main zones: the enterprise zone, which is your typical IT systems, and the manufacturing zone, which is the OT systems controlling the physical process. And critically, separating these two zones is something called an industrial demilitarized zone, or IDMZ.
Like a buffer zone between the business network and the factory floor.
Exactly like a buffer zone. The whole purpose of the IDMZ is to restrict direct communication between the IT systems and the OT systems. The idea is if the IT network gets compromised somehow, the infection or the attacker is hopefully contained within that IDMZ layer. This helps ensure that production, the physical process down in the OT zone, can continue running without interruption, even if there's a security incident higher up.
Okay. Containment is key.
Containment is absolutely key. Now, within these zones, the model breaks things down further into operational levels, usually numbered 0 through 5. Levels 5 and 4 are in the enterprise zone. Level 5 is the top-level corporate network handling, business operations, internet connectivity, maybe overall production reporting. Level 4 is the business logistics systems that support production, things like planning systems, scheduling, maybe database servers, email clients. Standard IT stuff, mostly using standard IT protocols like TCP/IP, HTTP, SMTP. Then you cross the IDMZ into the manufacturing zone. Level 3 is where you find operational systems or site operations management. Think production scheduling specific to the plant, quality assurance systems, data historians collecting process data. Level 2 is the control systems layer. This is where you find the supervisory controls like the DCS or SCADA software, the HMIs the operators use, maybe the main control room systems. Level 1 is basic controls. This involves the actual intelligent devices controlling the PLCs, the RTUs, the sensors, the actuators. They're executing the commands like start this motor, open that valve. And finally, Level 0 is the physical process itself. The actual valves, pumps, motors, sensors, the machinery on the factory floor. An error here directly affects the physical operation.
Okay, so different levels, different functions, and presumably different security needs and protocols at each level.
Precisely. At the higher IT levels, 4 and 5, you see standard IT protocols. But as you move down into the OT manufacturing zone, levels 3, 2, 1, 0, you increasingly encounter specialized, often proprietary industrial protocols, things like Modbus, Perfinet, DMP3, CIP, EtherCAT, Foundation Fieldbus, S7 communication, a whole different world of communication. The key takeaway for security is that this segmented model with the IDMZ is that crucial buffer, allows you to apply specific, tailored security controls at each level based on the function and the protocols used there. It's essentially the blueprint for building cyber defense in depth for these critical environments.
Yeah, this model seems absolutely crucial. It helps you figure out where to put your firewalls, where you need stricter access controls, how to segment things properly. It really acts as that essential blueprint for defending critical infrastructure, making sure a problem in, say, the email system doesn't somehow cascade down and shut off a power generator.
That's exactly the goal. It's all about containing threats, limiting the blast radius of an incident, and ensuring the resilience and safety of those core physical operations.
Okay, so we've mapped out this huge interconnected landscape of IoT and OT. We see how it's structured, how it communicates. But now for the slightly scary part. What does all this complexity mean for potential attackers? Where are the weak spots? Where are the cracks in this connected armor that they're actively trying to exploit?
Yeah, right. This is where an ethical hacker starts probing. And unfortunately, the Internet of Things, despite all its convenience, is often, well, riddled with common vulnerabilities. Many of these really stem from a rush to market, prioritizing features and low cost over building in robust security from the start. The Open Worldwide Application Security Project, OWASP, does a great job highlighting the key areas where attackers consistently find weaknesses in IoT. One of the absolute biggest, most pervasive issues is weak, guessable, or hard-coded passwords. It's shocking how many IoT devices ship with default credentials like admin and password, or have passwords embedded directly in the firmware that can't even be changed. That's just leaving the front door wide open.
Like putting the key into the doormat, basically.
Exactly. Another major area is insecure network services. Devices might be running services maybe for remote management or data transfer that aren't properly encrypted. This allows attackers on the same network to easily eavesdrop on communication, maybe steal credentials or inject malicious commands. Or the services might lack proper authentication, letting anyone connect. Then there's the lack of a secure update mechanism. This is a huge one. If the firmware updates pushed out to devices aren't digitally signed to verify they came from the manufacturer, or if they're transmitted without encryption, an attacker could potentially intercept that update and inject their own malicious code. So the very process meant to fix security holes becomes the way attackers get in.
Wow, that's insidious, turning a patch into an attack vector.
It is. And finally, you just have generally insecure interfaces. This could be a web interface with common vulnerabilities like SQL injection or cross-site scripting. It could be an insecure API that doesn't validate input properly. Or it could even be physical interfaces like debug ports left accessible on the device hardware, which can give an attacker direct low-level access if they have physical possession.
So really it's like that house with many doors and windows, isn't it? So unlocked, some with flimsy locks, keys hidden nearby. Attackers are just systematically checking every single potential entry point. It sounds like a goldmine of opportunities for them.
It truly can be. And unfortunately, the pressure to release products quickly and cheaply often means security becomes an afterthought for some manufacturers, leaving these doors wide open for attackers to exploit. Okay, so let's make these vulnerabilities more concrete. Let's talk about some common IoT attack scenarios, how attackers actually exploit these weaknesses in the real world. A really well-known one is the distributed denial of service, DDoS attack using IoT botnets. Attackers find vulnerable devices, maybe ones with those default passwords, and install malware on them, turning them into remotely controlled bots. They then assemble thousands, even millions of these compromised devices into a botnet. This massive army is then directed to bombard a single target, maybe a website, an online service, even critical infrastructure, with an overwhelming flood of traffic. The goal is to make that target system crash or become completely unavailable to legitimate users. The Mirai botnet was a famous example of this, using webcams and routers.
Right, weaponizing everyday devices on a massive scale.
Exactly. Another clever one, often targeting smart vehicles or garage door openers, is the rolling code attack. Many key fobs use rolling codes, where the code changes with each press to prevent simple replay attacks. But an attacker can be more sophisticated. They might use a jamming device to block the car from receiving the first code you send, while simultaneously sniffing and recording that code. You, the victim, think the fob just didn't work, so you press it again. The car receives the second code and unlocks. Now the attacker has the first code recorded. They can immediately replay that first code to unlock the car again later, or maybe open your garage because the car hasn't used that code yet.
Whoa, that's sneaky. Exploiting the mechanism designed for security.
It is. Ransomware attacks are also increasingly hitting IoT. Malware gets onto a device, maybe a smart TV, a network-attached storage device, even connected medical equipment, and encrypts the user's data or locks the device's screen. Then a ransom demand appears, usually asking for cryptocurrency, to get access back. And of course, the classic man-in-the-middle attack is still very relevant in IoT. An attacker positions themselves, logically, between two communicating parties, say your phone and your smart camera. They intercept the communication, potentially relaying messages, but also eavesdropping on them or even altering them in transit. This often happens by exploiting weak encryption or authentication on the device or network.
These examples really drive home that IoT security isn't just about protecting data privacy, although that's important. It's about managing real, tangible risks to our physical safety, our access to devices, and our property. It feels like a whole different ballgame compared to just securing a laptop.
It absolutely is. The attack surface is enormous, incorporates the physical world, and the consequences of compromise can be far more immediate and impactful than traditional IT security failures. And building on those attack methods, it's really important to understand that these aren't just, theoretical possibilities. They are actively exploited by various types of specialized IoT malware. One prominent example that's been evolving is KmsdBot and its newer, more capable variant, KmsdX. This malware is specifically designed to compromise IoT devices, and it keeps getting updated with new tricks. KmsdX, for instance, actively scans the internet, looking for devices with Open Secure Shell, SSH ports, or Telnet services, common remote access protocols. It then tries to log in using huge lists of common weak or default passwords pulled from a command and control server. It's brutally effective because, sadly, so many IoT devices are deployed without changing those factory credentials.
Just brute forcing its way and using the most common passwords?
Exactly. It exploits that basic lack of security hygiene on a massive scale. Once it compromises a device, it ropes it into a botnet, ready to be used for DDoS attacks or other malicious activities. Its whole purpose is to weaponize your smart devices against others or against you. Another variant you might see mentioned is the IZ1H9 variant. This one also spreads aggressively through common protocols like HTTP, SSH, and Telnet, again relying heavily on brute force attacks with lists of weak credentials. It just highlights how fundamental password security is as a defense. There are others too, like Whalen Crab, P2Pinfect, IoTroop. The list keeps growing.
So this isn't just theoretical stuff in a lab. These are active, evolving threats out there right now, constantly looking for vulnerable devices. And often they're getting in by exploiting the absolute most basic security oversights, like leaving the default password unchanged. It really hammers home that simple security hygiene isn't just a recommendation, it's absolutely critical.
It is the very first line of defense, and tragically, it's often the line that's most frequently neglected, both by manufacturers and sometimes by users themselves.
Okay, so let's switch hats for a moment. If you were an ethical hacker, one of the good guys trying to find these weaknesses before the bad guys do, where would you even start? How do you begin hunting for vulnerable IoT and OT devices? It feels like trying to find that one specific needle in an ever-growing, globally connected haystack.
Yeah, it can feel like that. You're right. The initial phase, what we call information gathering or reconnaissance, is absolutely vital. It's not about attacking yet. It's about meticulously collecting details about potential targets, understanding the landscape. And one of the most well-known and powerful tools for this, especially for internet-facing devices, is Shodan. People often call it the search engine for the Internet of Things, or maybe less flatteringly, the search engine for hackers.
Because it finds everything connected.
Pretty much anything that's directly connected to the Internet. Routers, webcams, servers, traffic lights, smart home devices, and yes, even industrial control systems. Attackers use Shodan to find devices and grab crucial information: their IP address, maybe their host name, the internet service provider, ISP they're using, their physical location based on the IP, and importantly, the banner information. That banner often reveals the make, model, software version, and running services on the device, huge clues for an attacker. You can use filters in Shodan to narrow things down, like searching for specific types of webcams in a particular city, webcam xp city.paris, or even by geographic coordinates.
And you mentioned industrial systems. Attackers use it for that too.
Oh, definitely. Attackers specifically use Shodan to find exposed ICS and SCADA systems. They might search for devices listening on common industrial protocol ports, like port 502 for Modbus, or search for specific PLC manufacturer names. Finding an exposed control system for, say, a water treatment plant or a power facility via Shodan is a major first step for a potential attacker. For getting deeper insight into specific hardware, another technique is using an FCC ID, Federal Communications Commission identification search. Almost every electronic device sold in the U.S. has this unique ID printed on it somewhere. If you can get that ID, maybe from a photo or just by looking at the device, you can search for it on the FCC's website, fcc.gov. And what you often find is a goldmine: internal and external photos of the device, detailed test reports, user manuals, even technical descriptions of how it operates. This gives incredible insight into the hardware, the chips used, potential interfaces.
Wow, that's like getting the blueprints just from a sticker on the back.
It can be surprisingly revealing. And then, of course, there's direct information gathering through sniffing. This involves passively listening to network traffic. Tools like Wireshark allow you to capture packets on a network, maybe a Wi-Fi network an IoT device is connected to. By analyzing this captured traffic, an attacker might be able to identify devices, see what protocols they're using, maybe even find unencrypted usernames, passwords, or sensitive commands being transmitted. You might use other tools first, like Nmap to find open ports, or airmonning and arrow dumping to monitor wireless traffic specifically.
So this whole reconnaissance phase, it really is like a digital treasure hunt, isn't it? You're piecing together clues, finding blueprints, identifying potential weak points on these connected devices, all before you even think about trying to actually hack anything. Understanding what's out there and how it's put together seems like half the battle.
It's absolutely foundational. Without good reconnaissance, any attempt at exploitation would be inefficient, like fumbling around in the dark. You need to know your target, right? So once you've identified potential targets through reconnaissance, the next logical step is vulnerability scanning. This is where you actively probe those devices to pinpoint specific exploitable weaknesses. For IoT specifically, there are tools like IoT Seeker. It's a neat script designed to scan a network and check if detected IoT devices are still using their default factory-set credentials. You'd be amazed how often that simple check yields results. It just automates looking for those admin password-type logins.
Low-hanging fruit, basically.
Exactly, the easiest wins. But for more comprehensive scanning, the go-to tool for many security professionals is Nmap, the network mapper. Nmap is incredibly versatile. It doesn't just see if a device is online, it can send carefully crafted network packets to figure out what services are running on which ports, often guess the operating system, and even identify potential firewall rules. You can run scans targeting specific IP addresses or whole network ranges, looking for open TCP or UDP ports across the entire possible range, 0, 65535. For industrial control systems, Nmap has specific scripts you can run using the entity or script option that are designed to probe for common ICS SCADA ports and protocols. It can try to identify HMIs, BISnet devices used in building automation, Ethernet IP devices common in factories, and specific vendor PLCs like Siemens or Omron.
So Nmap is like a digital flashlight sweeping across the network and highlighting every open door or window.
That's a great way to put it. It maps out the attack surface in detail. Now, moving towards more formal vulnerability assessment, especially in enterprise or industrial settings, you have tools like Nessus. Nessus is a well-regarded vulnerability scanner. It has specific capabilities and plugins designed for ICS and SCADA environments. It goes beyond just port scanning. It checks for known vulnerabilities, CVEs, configuration issues, missing patches, and provides a more structured report on the security posture of the systems it scans. You can create custom scan policies, focus on specific vulnerabilities, and get a prioritized list of issues to address. And at the even higher enterprise level, you have comprehensive platforms like Skybox Vulnerability Control or Microsoft Defender for IoT. These are designed to give organizations continuous visibility across their entire IoT and OT environments. They correlate data, identify assets, find vulnerabilities, check for compliance issues, detect unauthorized devices or connections, and provide risk scoring to help prioritize remediation efforts.
Okay, so this scanning phase is really about creating that detailed vulnerability map, isn't it? Moving from just knowing devices exist to pinpointing every single potential crack, every weakness in the system that an attacker might try to leverage. It's like putting a big red circle around every potential entry point.
Precisely. It bridges the gap between reconnaissance, knowing what's there, and exploitation, knowing how to get in. It tells the ethical hacker or the attacker exactly where to focus their efforts next.
All right, we've done the recon, we've scanned for vulnerabilities, we have our map of weak spots. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit unnerving. Beyond those basic scans, what are some of the more advanced, maybe more sophisticated ways attackers actually probe, exploit, and potentially take control of these deeply embedded IoT and OT systems?
Yeah, this is where attackers often get quite creative and highly technical, moving beyond simple software exploits to interact with the systems in less conventional ways. One really fascinating and powerful area is using software-defined radio, SDR. SDR essentially uses software to control radio hardware. This gives attackers incredible flexibility to manipulate and analyze almost any kind of radio signal. With SDR tools like a HacRF1, which can transmit and receive signals across a huge frequency range, from 1 megahertz up to 6 gigahertz, or even cheaper RTL SDR dongles, attackers can listen in on wireless protocols used by IoT devices. Think Zigbee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth, even proprietary garage door opener signals.
So they can just eavesdrop on wireless communication?
Eavesdrop, yes, but also much more. They can perform replay attacks. Imagine recording the radio signal your key fob sends to unlock your car. With SDR, an attacker could potentially capture that signal and simply replay it later to unlock your car themselves. They can also try to decode unknown protocols, analyze spectrum usage, or even jam signals to cause denial of service. Tools like GKRDX Universal Radio Hacker URH and GNU Radio are used for this kind of analysis and attack development.
Wow, attacking through the airways. What about attacking the hardware directly?
Absolutely. Hacking ICS hardware itself is another advanced and often very effective technique. This involves physically interacting with the device's components. One example is NAND glitching. This isn't a software bug. It involves physically manipulating the power supply or communication lines to the device's flash memory chip, the NAND chip, during the boot-up process. By introducing carefully timed glitches or voltage drops, an attacker can sometimes cause the system to skip security checks or load a fallback mode, potentially giving them privileged root access to the device. It's like physically tricking the device into letting you in during startup.
That sounds incredibly low level and difficult.
It requires skill and specific hardware, yes. Another related area is side channel attacks. Here, attackers don't try to break the encryption mathematically. Instead, they observe the physical side effects of the device performing cryptographic operations. For example, by precisely measuring the device's power consumption or electromagnetic emanations while it's encrypting data, they can sometimes deduce the secret encryption key being used. Tools like Chip Whisperer are designed specifically for performing these kinds of power analysis and glitching attacks against embedded hardware. It's a non-invasive way to extract secrets.
Extracting keys just by watching power fluctuations. That's mind-blowing.
It's incredibly sophisticated. Beyond that, attackers also exploit specific protocols and devices. They might use tools like OpenSniffer to capture Zigbee wireless traffic, potentially replaying commands or even flooding the network to cause denial of service. They might leverage tools like CamOver, which uses the Shodan API to find vulnerable internet-connected cameras and potentially exploit known vulnerabilities to gain access. Gaining remote access using Telnet remains a classic. Attackers scan for devices with Telnet's port 23 open common on older routers, industrial devices, VoIP phones. Since Telnet is unencrypted, they can sniff traffic easily. If default credentials haven't been changed, they can just log right in or use brute force tools to guess the password. And then there's firmware analysis and emulation. Attackers will often try to download a device's firmware update file. They use tools like binwalk to unpack the firmware image, revealing the underlying file system, configuration files, and executable programs.
Like dissecting the device's brain.
Exactly. They'll hunt through the files for hard-coded passwords, private keys, vulnerabilities in the code. Tools like grep help search for patterns, and scripts like FirmWalker automate finding common security issues. Then they might use emulation software like QEMU, Quick Emulator, or the Firmware Analysis Toolkit to actually run the firmware's code or web server in a safe virtual environment on their own computer. This lets them test exploits dynamically before trying them on a real device. Finally, specific industrial protocols are major targets. Hacking Modbus slaves is common. Modbus, widely used in OT, typically runs in plain text with no authentication. Attackers can use frameworks like Metasploit, which has specific modules, auxiliary scanner, SCADA Modbus client, or command line tools like Modbus CLI to directly scan for Modbus devices slaves on a network. Once found, these tools allow the attacker to read and, more dangerously, write values to the Modbus registers and coils on the target device. This means they could directly manipulate physical processes, change set points, turn equipment on or off, disrupt operations. Similarly, protocols like DNP3, often using port 20,000, if exposed directly to the internet without proper security, can provide attackers with remote access, often just by guessing default credentials on a login page found through Shodan.
This really paints a picture of the incredible range of techniques attackers use. It's not just software exploits, it's radio frequencies, physical hardware manipulation, deep firmware analysis, direct protocol abuse. They're leveraging everything available to compromise these deeply embedded systems. It's definitely a far cry from just guessing a website password.
It absolutely is. It demonstrates the sophistication, the persistence, and the diverse skill sets involved in attacking these critical IoT and OT environments. And it highlights just how many layers of potential vulnerability exist, from the physical hardware right up to the application code and network protocols. Okay, let's pivot now specifically to operational technology, OT. While some IoT attack vectors apply here too, OT has its own unique challenges and attack vectors due to its direct control over physical processes and its often unique infrastructure. First, let's recap the challenges of OT security that make it distinct. You often have legacy technology. Many OT systems were designed decades ago, before modern cybersecurity was even a concept. They might lack basic features like encryption or strong authentication, and replacing them is incredibly expensive and disruptive. The IT-OT convergence we talked about is a double-edged sword. Connecting OT to IT networks exposes those legacy systems to threats originating from the IT side, like malware or phishing attacks. Plus, IT security teams often don't have the specialized knowledge needed to properly secure OT environments. The potential for physical impact is the defining characteristic. A successful attack isn't just about data. It can cause equipment damage, environmental spills, production shutdowns, or even injury or loss of life. You also deal with proprietary software and hardware. Many industrial vendors use their own unique protocols and systems, making standardization difficult. Patching can be a nightmare, requiring coordination with multiple vendors and potentially voiding warranties or causing unexpected operational issues.
Yeah, patching a power plant controller isn't quite like updating Windows, is it?
Not even close. The risks of unintended consequences are much higher. These challenges lead to common OT vulnerabilities. Things like weak or default passwords everywhere, insecure firewall rules, OT systems accidentally placed on the main IT network without proper segmentation, lack of encryption on wireless OT links, and unrestricted outbound internet access from critical control systems. To help understand and categorize attacker behavior specifically in this space, the security community uses the MIT or ATT and CK for ICS knowledge base. It's similar to the general ATT and CK framework, but tailored for industrial control systems. It maps out attacker tactics and techniques across different phases, like initial access, exploiting public-facing applications, drive-by compromises, execution, changing device operating modes via command line, persistence, modifying controller programs, infecting project files, privilege escalation, evasion, using rootkits, discovery, network sniffing, and ultimately impair process control, brute forcing I/O points, denying operator control. It's a vital resource for defenders.
So it's a playbook for how attacks on industrial systems typically unfold.
Exactly. It helps defenders anticipate threats and build appropriate defenses. Now, let's look at some specific OT attack examples. Attackers might target safety instrumented systems, SIS, directly, perhaps by exploiting vulnerabilities in the underlying protocols they use, aiming to disable those critical safety functions. Spear phishing remains a common entry point. A carefully crafted email to an engineer or operator with a malicious attachment or link could introduce malware into the OT network if they open it on a workstation connected to or able to bridge to the control environment. Buffer overflow attacks can target vulnerabilities in the software running on HMIs or communication interfaces within the ICS, potentially allowing attackers to inject malicious code or commands. We see credential management vulnerabilities everywhere, hard-coded passwords and applications, credentials stored in clear text, poor protection leading to attackers gaining administrative access to control systems. There's also code injection, SQL, OS command injection, particularly targeting web interfaces or HMIs, and even vulnerabilities in specialized HMI programming languages. And hacking PLCs is a major concern. One technique is the PLC rootkit attack, sometimes called PLC ghost. Attackers gain access, figure out how the PLC maps its physical inputs-outputs to memory, and then manipulate the I/O initialization process to gain hidden, persistent control over the PLC's operations, often bypassing detection mechanisms. The evil PLC attack focuses on finding internet-exposed PLCs, often via Shodan, then using standard programming download procedures, if security is weak, to modify the PLC's configuration and logic. This could subtly alter a manufacturing process, cause equipment damage, or even use the compromised PLC as a pivot point to attack other OT workstations.
So they're reprogramming the core logic of the controllers themselves. That's terrifying.
It's one of the most direct ways to cause physical disruption. Attackers also target RF, radio frequency, remote controllers used for things like industrial cranes or machinery. Simple replay attacks might work if the security is weak. Command injection involves reverse engineering the RF protocol and sending crafted packets to manipulate the equipment. They might abuse the emergency stop, e-stop function, by repeatedly sending the signal to cause denial of service. Or even malicious reprogramming, injecting malware into the controller's firmware for persistent access. OT supply chain attacks are also a growing threat. This could involve injecting malicious code into software updates from trusted vendors, tampering with hardware components during manufacturing or shipping, or compromising third-party service providers who have access to OT networks for maintenance. And finally, some notorious OT malware really highlights the danger. You mentioned FuxNet earlier. This is destructive malware specifically aimed at disrupting OT environments. It can manipulate sensor data, block access to gateways, damage physical components, rewrite device memory to block remote access, exploit weak credentials, and even use techniques like fuzzing, sending malformed packets to try and crash systems. It's pure industrial sabotage. Another example is KmsdBot, which includes components like Pi-hop and Lightwork. This malware specifically targets electric power grid operations. Lightwork can connect to remote servers, upload files, and then send specific industrial protocol commands like IEC 608705104 to directly change the state of equipment like circuit breakers, turning them on or off, potentially causing widespread outages. It even tries to delete itself afterwards to cover its tracks.
These aren't just theoretical IT threats anymore, are they? These are attacks specifically engineered to break, disrupt, damage, or take control of the actual physical world. The consequences go way beyond lost data or financial theft. They blur the line entirely between a cyber attack and a physical disaster.
That line is completely blurred in the OT space. It's why securing these environments is so critical, so challenging, and requires such specialized knowledge and vigilance. The stakes are simply immense.
Okay, so we've journeyed through this incredibly complex, often quite vulnerable landscape of IoT and OT hacking. We've seen the risks, the sophisticated attacks. It's clear the challenges are significant. Now, let's get to the crucial part. What can we actually do about it? What can we, as users, as developers, as organizations, do to build stronger defenses and protect ourselves in this deeply interconnected world?
That's absolutely the key question. Let's start with securing the Internet of Things, IoT. It really requires a multifaceted approach, beginning with some fundamental security controls that should be standard practice. Simple things first. Disable default user accounts like guest or demo. Implement strong authentication, unique, complex passwords for device firmware, BIOS access, web interfaces. Use lockout features to prevent brute force attacks after too many failed login attempts. Network-wise, always try to locate control system networks and IoT devices behind firewalls, isolating them from your main business or home network whenever possible. Implementing intrusion prevention systems, IPS, and intrusion detection systems, IDS, can help spot malicious traffic. For communication, use end-to-end encryption wherever feasible. Public key infrastructure, PKI, can help manage keys and certificates for authentication. If remote access is needed, use secure methods like a virtual private network, VPN architecture. And critically, configure firewalls to allow only trusted IP addresses to access sensitive devices from the internet. For home users, definitely disable Telnet, Port 23, and Universal Plug-and-Play UPnP on your router if you don't explicitly need them as their common entry points.
So basic blocking and tackling on the network side. What about defending against specific types of attacks we discussed?
Good point. For things like web-based attacks that might try to exploit your browser to attack devices on your local network, like DNS rebinding, consider disabling WebRTC in your browser settings if you don't use it, and use reputable ad blockers or privacy extensions. To specifically counter DNS rebinding attacks, some DNS servers or firewall tools can filter private IP address ranges from DNS replies. For DDoS attacks, especially for businesses, using cloud-based anti-DDoS mitigation services is often necessary. To prevent replay attacks on things like key fobs, implementing proper rolling code sequences, or adding timestamps and nonces to commands is key. But beyond configuration, secure IoT development practices are absolutely vital. Security needs to be baked in from the start, not bolted on later. Secure boot is crucial. This ensures the device only boots up using authenticated, validated code, preventing attackers from loading malicious firmware. Developers must secure API endpoints using strong authentication and rigorous data validation to prevent common web attacks like SQL injection or cross-site scripting, XSS. Threat modeling should be part of the design process, thinking like an attacker to identify potential risks related to data privacy, device authentication, communication protocols, etc. Adhering to secure coding practices helps prevent common bugs like buffer overflows using safer functions in languages like CC++, injection flaws, etc. Security needs to be integrated throughout the entire IoT software development lifecycle, SDLC. Security testing, including penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, and code reviews, must happen continuously. Hardware-based security features like Trusted Platform Modules, TPM, or Secure Elements can provide a hardware root of trust for storing cryptographic keys securely, enabling secure boot, and offering tamper-resistant storage. And finally, transparency and disclosure are important. Manufacturers should be clear about their device's security features, known risks, and have a process for researchers to report vulnerabilities responsibly. The OWASP Top 10 IoT Vulnerabilities list also provides clear solutions for common problems for weak passwords. Use MFA and change defaults. For insecure updates, verify source and integrity, encrypt the transfer. For organizations managing lots of devices, IoT device management solutions become essential. Platforms like Microsoft's Azure IoT Central, Oracle's Fusion Cloud IoT, or open source options like OpenBalena allow for centralized onboarding, monitoring, patching, permissions management, and overall security posture enhancement for large fleets of IoT devices.
Right. So securing IoT really isn't a single fix. It's a comprehensive, holistic approach. It starts with the design, covers the hardware, the software, the network configuration, and even includes ongoing management and responsible user behavior. It's a big, ongoing challenge.
It truly is. Every single layer, every stage of the lifecycle needs careful attention to build meaningful resilience. Okay, now let's shift focus to fortifying operational technology environments. As we've discussed, this presents unique complexities and an even more critical need for robust, specialized security due to the physical consequences of failure. Here, defenses are often structured and implemented using frameworks like the Purdue model as a guide. So thinking about the Purdue model levels, security controls need to be tailored. Up in the enterprise zone, levels 5 and 4, you're focused on typical IT threats like spear phishing and ransomware. So you need strong firewalls, IPS, web application firewalls, endpoint detection and response, EDR, maybe a security information and event management SIEM system. The crucial industrial DMZ, IDMZ, acts as that buffer. Here, the goal is preventing unauthorized access between IT and OT. Controls include firewalls, often specifically configured for industrial protocols, IPS, proxy servers, jump servers for controlled remote access, potentially data diodes for one-way data flow, network access control, NEC, and definitely multi-factor authentication, MFA, for any access crossing this boundary. Down in the manufacturing zone, levels 3 and 2, where the control systems live, you need to defend against malware spreading internally and exploitation of industrial protocols. This means internal firewalls segmenting different process areas, perhaps antivirus on HMIs if compatible, application whitelisting to only allow approved software, Deep Packet Inspection DPI capable of understanding OT protocols, specialized industrial IPS, network detection and response NDR tools, looking for anomalous behavior, and strong network segmentation. And at the lowest levels, levels 1 and 0, closest to the physical process, you're worried about physical security breaches and direct manipulation of PLCs or sensors. Security might involve encrypting specific links, maybe using IPsec, deploying security gateways, ensuring point-to-point communication where possible, and maybe MSE address filtering or authentication.
So it's layers of defense, tailored to the specific risks at each level of the industrial process.
Exactly. And increasingly, a powerful strategy being adopted, especially given the legacy nature of many OT systems, is implementing a zero-trust model for ISS data. The core idea of zero trust is simple but profound. Assume no device or user can be trusted by default, regardless of whether they're inside or outside the network perimeter. Every single access request must be continuously verified based on identity, device health, context, etc.
So never trust, always verify applied to the factory floor.
Precisely. For OT, this involves 3 main steps. First, defining the network, clearly identifying all your critical assets, data flows, and applications. Second, mapping the traffic, understanding exactly how devices communicate and what access is truly necessary. Third, applying policies, implementing technology that continuously verifies identity and context for every access attempt, enforcing least privilege. This provides much stronger access management, especially for legacy systems that can't easily be upgraded, and gives much better visibility. Beyond zero trust, several other additional OT defense strategies are vital. Strict network segmentation to isolate critical control networks from IT and even from each other, using deep packet inspection, DPI, and next-generation firewalls and GFWs, and network boundaries that can actually understand and filter potentially malicious traffic within industrial protocols, not just block ports. Regular security audits, especially checking for compliance with secure password policies and identifying any lingering default credentials. Carefully monitoring outbound internet access from OT systems. Ideally, critical systems shouldn't have direct internet access. Updates should be downloaded to a separate repository, scanned, and then carefully introduced. Using honeypots and deception technologies specifically designed for OT environments can lure attackers away from real systems and provide valuable threat intelligence. Runtime application self-protection, RASP tools, if compatible, can monitor OT applications as they run, detecting and potentially blocking threats like buffer overflows or code injection in real time, and basic hygiene. Protect device access credentials, isolate sensitive devices from potentially unstable power sources to prevent electrical attacks, implement robust anti-malware, where possible, and comprehensive event logging. Finally, the OT security community relies heavily on collaborative organizations and frameworks. The Operational Technology Cybersecurity Coalition, OTCC, works with industry and government to promote better OT cybersecurity practices. Operational Technology Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, OTISACs, provide hubs for sharing threat intelligence within specific sectors like energy or water utilities. The Industrial Internet Security Framework, ISF, offers architectures and best practices for building trustworthy IoT systems. And perhaps most importantly, the International Society of Automation, ISA International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC 62443 series of standards, provides a comprehensive, flexible framework for securing industrial automation and control systems throughout their life cycle. Many regulations and best practices are based on ISAAC 62443. There are also specialized OT security solutions from vendors like Nozomi Networks, Forescout, Tenable OT Security, Dragos, and others, offering passive monitoring, threat detection, and vulnerability management tailored for industrial environments.
Right. So protecting OT, it's clearly not just about installing antivirus. It's about deep network segmentation, understanding industrial protocols, implementing zero-trust principles, leveraging specialized tools and frameworks, and constantly ensuring the safety and continuous operation of those critical physical processes that, well, underpin our entire modern society. It sounds like a really complex, ongoing battle requiring constant vigilance and very specialized expertise.
It absolutely is. It demands a proactive, layered defense strategy that's continually monitored and adapted to the evolving threat landscape and the unique constraints of the operational environment. There's no room for complacency when physical safety is on the line. #TechTag recap.
Okay, phew. That was an incredibly detailed deep dive into IoT and OT hacking. We covered a lot of ground.
Well,
So stepping back for a moment, what are the absolute key takeaways? If someone listening were to remember just a few core concepts from our discussion, what should they be?
yeah, it was a lot, wasn't it? Let's try to distill it. First, IoT. Remember, it's that massive, pervasive network of connected devices, everything from your smartwatch to industrial sensors. They sense, collect, and send data. But the key point is its sheer diversity in how things connect and talk creates a huge, complex attack surface. Second, OT. These are the critical systems controlling physical processes, manufacturing, power grids, water treatment. The big story here is IT-OT convergence, which brings efficiency, but also massive risks because a cyber attack can cause direct physical harm. The stakes are fundamentally higher. Third, vulnerabilities. We saw that weaknesses in both IoT and OT often boil down to basics being missed, things like default passwords, unencrypted communication, insecure update mechanisms. OWASP highlights these common failings, which unfortunately provide easy entry points for attackers.
Right, the fundamentals are still so important.
Critically important. Fourth, the attacks. We saw a huge range, didn't we? From massive DDoS botnets using compromised IoT devices to incredibly sophisticated hardware hacks like NAND glitching or side-channel attacks, right through to protocol-specific exploits targeting Modbus or DMP3 in industrial settings, and dangerous, purpose-built malware like KmsdBot for IoT or FuxNet and Cosmice Energy designed purely for OT sabotage. And finally, defenses. The key takeaway here is that protection must be multi-layered and specialized. For IoT, it means secure development practices from the start plus strong fundamental security controls. For OT, it demands frameworks like the Purdue model for segmentation, adopting zero-trust principles, using specialized security tools that understand industrial protocols, and collaborating through organizations and standards like IEC 62443. It's about building resilience at every level.
That's a great summary. And this knowledge, it really feels vital for pretty much anyone living today, doesn't it? Whether you're just a consumer trying to figure out smart home privacy, or you're a professional working in IT or cybersecurity, or maybe you're involved in engineering or operations, or even if you're just someone curious about the invisible forces shaping our future. Understanding this intersection of the digital and physical is crucial. It's the world we all inhabit now. Hashtag tag outro. Well, that was an absolutely fascinating, incredibly comprehensive journey. We've explored a world that's both technically amazing and, let's be honest, a little bit daunting in its complexity and its potential risks. It really just underscores how absolutely vital cybersecurity has become in this hyper-connected age.
Indeed it does. And the more we all understand these systems, their intricacies, how they connect, where the potential vulnerabilities lie, the better equipped we become to build them securely, manage them effectively, and protect them appropriately. It's really about continuous learning and applying these security principles diligently. That's how we build a safer, more resilient tomorrow.
So here's a final thought to leave you with as we wrap up. As more and more of our physical world, everything from our homes and cars to our critical infrastructure like power grids and water supplies, becomes deeply intertwined with the digital realm, that line between a cyber attack and a physical disaster just keeps getting blurrier, doesn't it? What responsibilities does this new reality place on all of us? On us as users? On the developers creating these technologies, on the defenders trying to protect them? How do we ensure not just efficiency and convenience, but fundamental safety and resilience in this deeply connected future we're building together? Something to think about. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and definitely stay informed. Thank you so much for joining us on The Deep Dive.